Today, we've got a brand new Comp-Spec drift car that comes ready to run and features magnetic body mounts, carbon fiber goodies, a differential, and it looks ready to perform. So today, we're talking all about the new Redcat RDS Comp-Spec drift car. Here it is, the Redcat RDS. Now this is a 1/10 scale rear wheel drive drift car that comes with brushless electronics, capable of 2 and 3 cell LiPo battery. Now one of the first things you'll notice about this is there's no body clips on the body. This drift car comes with magnetic body mounts. Now essentially you can just kind of put your fingers under the wheel wells to get the body off, and underneath the body there's this assembly in the front that also hosts the grille and the headlights, and there's another plastic assembly in the rear with the magnets that mate to the magnets in the chassis. Now there are standard body mount posts if you want to use the other bodies, but the body included is pretty nice and it comes in this burnt orange color. There is a second color available though. If you want to add LEDs, you can do it, with the front end of this car having these clear headlight sections with an LED going right inside there. The front of the body also has this hard plastic grille with some decals in the front to add some details. There's also this black trim that goes all the way around our windows here, and it's primed for other decals to be added, which are included. Now in the back of the body, there's more hard plastic assembly attached for that rear end and the taillight lenses, which you can add LEDs into. Now to go with the scale, looks, and realism of this car is a big old plastic diffuser that's attached to the chassis on the back of the car, and this diffuser also holds in the magnet for the rear body mount system. The front end also has this hard plastic air splitter which sticks out past the body, and it has the magnet attached to it for the body system. There's no foam bumper here, but one is included in the box that you can add optionally. Now inside this chassis, this car is really impressive, and there's quite a bit of carbon fiber used, including the main lower carbon fiber chassis plate. Then there's the carbon fiber upper plate. We also have carbon fiber front shock tower and rear shock tower, and then the motor plate. Now something interesting about this chassis is how thin the chassis is back here, which provides a lot of flex when you twist the chassis side to side, which usually helps generate traction in low traction conditions. Now aside from that, this car is really decked out with a lot of adjustability. There are adjustable turnbuckles used in every location, and they're notched so you know the thread direction. In the front end, you've got turnbuckles to adjust your camber, and those are threaded into an upper arm, which is non-directional, so you can use them on the left or right side. That upper arm, if you move it front to back, will adjust your caster, and you use the little spacers to do it. Now for the front lower arms, those also look non-directional, so you can use them on the left or right side, and then they use a turnbuckle down there with a ball cup on the end for more adjustability. Now for the rear suspension arms, same thing, they look non-directional, left or right side compatible. There's no turnbuckles used here, but you can adjust the wheelbase of the car quite a bit. It's stock at 257 millimeters, which seems to be the standard, but you can adjust it from about 253 to 261 millimeters. Now for the shocks, they have aluminum threaded shock bodies with a plastic cap and a plastic threader nut on there. They're oil filled and they feel pretty smooth. Now for the front end steering system, it's really interesting with the Ackerman plate that is adjustable directly in the center of the vehicle up front. You can basically scoot it forward or back off of the servo horn. The plate is almost like just a large servo horn attached. Now in the back end, we have a standard gearbox with an adjustable motor mount. The motor is set in a high position out of the box to help affect the chassis roll when you're turning, to generate more traction in low traction conditions. In really high traction settings, the motor in the low position would probably work best. Of course, in the rear end, we have more adjustable turnbuckles for that camber, and for the dog bones, they look like they're proper CVDs, and everything is rolling on bearings. But you can tell just by looking at the car, the bulk of the weight is sitting right here. So let's throw it on our scale weight system. Now there is a 2-cell shorty in the car to get it as realistic weights as possible, but the Redcat achieves a 34% weight bias in the front with a 66% in the back. Now what's interesting about this is that we just finished our MST Drifter build series a few months back, and that car, the RMX 2.0, achieved a 36% weight bias in the front and a 64% in the back, only after we bought the ESC relocation plate to move that in the back. The weight bias was much worse. before that. Now speaking of ESCs, this ESC is a 60 amp brushless 2 and 3 cell LiPo compatible unit with a T-style connector. It comes installed on the back of the car like this. For the motor, it's a brushless 3300 kV motor, and I believe it's a 550 can size. Now, Redcat is calling this a low drag motor because drag brake is not something you want in drifting. So to enhance that, the ESC has also been pre-programmed to have the zero drag brake in it. Now for the servo, it's a Hexfly unit and it's mounted upside down in the chassis right up front. This thing is really fast at 0.11 transit speed at 7.4 high voltage. Although the ESC BEC is programmed to be at 6 volts, so speeds are reduced a little bit, and that BEC is non-adjustable. Now the transmitter's your basic ready-to-run Redcat transmitter with some adjustability underneath this flap, and then that's paired to a 3-channel receiver in the car that gives 1 open port to power lights. And last but not least for the electronics is the Hexfly drift-specific style gyro. It's the GX1 with an adjustable gain and endpoint adjustment feature. Speaking of the endpoints, it's recommended that before you drive the vehicle, you set the endpoints. Now adjusting the endpoints is really dang easy. You'll need a battery in your car, batteries in the transmitter, and this tool that's included in the baggie of parts. Now with this tool, you're gonna hold down the endpoint button on the gyro while turning the car on and holding that button pressed down until the gyro LED flashes green and red together. Then you can release the button. Now you just turn the wheel on the transmitter all the way to one side and use the dual rate knob to adjust the position of that endpoint. And you basically want to take the plastic caliper here and smush it all the way up to this ball cup. And when they're smushed together, that's where you want it. You take the tool and you hit the endpoint button on the gyro. Now you're just going to repeat the process for the other side and you're good. Now Redcat has said you can actually trim this plastic caliper on the bottom side to provide clearance for this whole steering assembly to turn above the ball cup, because that plastic caliper hits the ball cup if you don't. And you'll need to do that to get the maximum amount of steering throw out of this car. Now batteries, you're gonna need a battery in this vehicle, and Redcat recommends a shorty style LiPo, but you can use a stick pack, and in fact the battery compartment is sized and configured for a stick pack, and you just fit it in by pulling down this plastic tabs while you slide in the battery. If you wanna use a shorty, you just unscrew these tabs from the bottom and you move them into the next set of holes. With that, the battery wiggles a little bit, but it's not going anywhere. Now the tires and wheels for this car, they are HDPE high density polyurethane tires that are smushed onto these black wheels. And the cool thing about it is they have these little wheel nut covers that slide right on the axle shaft that you would pop off with like a flat blade screwdriver to expose the 7mm wheel nut that's behind there. Now these are 12mm hexes on here, so you can fit pretty much any 10 scale drift wheel / tire combination that you want to go with. And we do try some other combos later on. But until then, where do the stock tires hook up really well? Well, we first tested the car on this carpet. This is low slung industrial carpet in our hallways, and the car is drivable, but there's room for improvement. Next, we went outside into our warehouse area where the surface is concrete. It is dusty, dirty concrete, but we drifted on it nonetheless, and the RDS did okay. It didn't really hook up. These tires didn't work so well out here. Perhaps if the surface was cleaner, maybe they would. Now next, this is tile in our front lobby, and again, similar to the concrete, it's really slick with these tires, and we kind of just slide all over the place. Next, we went outside into our parking lot. This is a sealed pavement parking lot, and the tires kind of hooked up, not really. Similar results to the concrete and the tile, but the tires are scuffed now, so let's throw it back on the carpet. Okay. I can feel a light and day difference with the traction here on the carpet now that the tires have been scuffed in from outside. Now in a little bit, we're gonna go to our retail store where we have a drift track and we know what tires work well there and we already have them. So before we head out there, I wanna do some things to make this body look a little bit better, and the car already came with the decals to do it. So it probably took maybe 15-20 minutes, and I used the box art car as my inspiration to pretty much copy. Also, there's a rear spoiler that I put on back here. You have to remove the rear taillight assembly to get to the screw holes, but having the spoiler on there looks way better. So let's go to the drift track. Now first thing, test the car as it is. Chris, who works at the store and knows a lot more about drifting than myself, noticed the gyro gain looked a little low, and he was right. I turned down the gain days ago testing it and never turned it back up. I just forgot. So we turned back up the gyro gain here, thanks to Chris, and driving control was definitely improved. Now next we swapped the tires to the popular choice for this surface, the Yokomo DRC Comp tires. With that change, the car was much more manageable on the track, and as a somewhat noob drifter, it was just easier for me to drive. Keep in mind, this was our first time with the car on that track and the first time on that particular track layout, so there was a little bit to get warmed up to. Chris, on the other hand, did a much better job driving around this layout that he's familiar with, so big thanks to him for helping us out. At the end of all that driving, Chris recommended that we definitely cut this plastic caliper and then reset the endpoints for the maximum steering throw. That would help us out on the track. And then for our worthy upgrade would be to upgrade the transmitter to something faster and more responsive, because he said he could detect a little bit of lag out of the ready-to-run transmitter. The car is pretty loaded with goodies though, like that quick steering servo, a differential in the gearbox, all those carbon parts, and then it's fully adjustable right out of the box. It's very impressive and definitely not your standard RTR car. Guys, if you want more info on the Redcat RDS and everything else we talked about in this video, go check out our links down below. And if you want more RC videos, check these out.